Today, I'd like to introduce you to Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder, a new 2D action RPG platformer by Metamorphosis Games that has just now released. This game's been on my radar for a while, mainly because I love the steampunk pixel art aesthetic. So I'm happy I was able to nab a sponsorship for this video from Fireshine Games. I was given a pre-release copy and played through the first 2 hours. Then the next day, I took the entire day off and binged the rest of it. Overall, I found Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder to be a fantastic title, but don't take my word for it. Go to the Steam store page and read reviews on your own. I'm pretty confident they'll say the same thing. The game is priced at just $19.99 USD, but will be running a sale until July 23rd for 10% off. Click the link in the description if you're interested in purchasing Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder. So I'm going to be talking about my experience playing the game, which will hopefully be informative as to whether this game is the right fit for you. In general, Gestalt is a combination of retro 2D action platformer game design and aesthetics with a lot of modern polish. To give you an idea, Gestalt has dodge rolls with invincibility frames, an Estus Flask-like system, an enemy stagger meter, an action RPG-inspired talent tree, a secondary power, the gun, which has to be charged with melee strikes, and the best part for me, tons of animation canceling, which made the combat so much more enjoyable. That said, while Gestalt has some clear Castlevania inspirations, don't go into it expecting a super non-linear Metroidvania. While Gestalt has Metroidvania elements, the main quest is quite linear. It's not a strike against the game, as for me one of the most appealing parts of Gestalt was just how consistent the experience was throughout. The game's difficulty level for me was on the easy side, but I still enjoyed making steady progress and constantly experiencing new things the game had to offer, namely the incredible artwork. They put a lot of effort into the art, and it's not repetitive either. There's tons of huge, amazing set pieces throughout the game. Character designs were also extremely detailed and well made. All main characters have full screen artwork that appears as they're speaking, which is important because Gestalt has a lot of interesting dialogue. In short, Gestalt tells the story of Canaan, the Steam city, a city which doesn't have the greatest outlook. See, in the introductory cutscene, we're told a story of how demons from the abyss invaded the world and wiped out most of humanity. Humanity had no choice but to reach through the gates of the abyss and harness the demonic powers themselves. In short, they put all this power into their special armor that a group called the Achaeans wore. They used it to fight back the demons and seal the gate, but the armor corrupted them. Then, because the whole world was left in ruins, everyone banded together and formed a city known as Canaan. But the Achaeans weren't allowed in because they were corrupted by the demonic powers. Sucks for them after they saved everyone. Naturally, the Achaeans swore vengeance for this. Something I like about the setting right from the get-go is that it's all set in the aftermath of a much greater conflict and doesn't have any real clear good or bad guys, just factions that are acting in their own best interests. That said, as humanity just barely survived extinction some years ago, these factions tend to be pretty ruthless and Machiavellian. We're first introduced to the Vanguard, which is a small group of Canaan warriors dedicated to fighting the Achaean threat, who mentioned that the leader of the Canaan is seeking peace. The Vanguard is skeptical that peace will be possible given the outbreak of something called scleroma, which wiped out part of the city, something the Vanguard attributes to the Achaeans. Needless to say, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of politics, hidden motivations, corruption, and plot twists. As you play the game, you receive little tidbits of discussions other characters are having. These are mostly from the perspective of the Vanguard and the leadership of Canaan, so we're largely in the dark regarding what the Achaeans are up to, and this works as an interesting mystery throughout the story. Also interesting is the fact that the protagonist, Alethea, isn't truly loyal to either faction, as she's a Soldner, an elite mercenary who has her own motivations as she uncovers more of what's truly going on behind the scenes. I enjoyed the story of Gestalt. It kept me constantly wanting to know what would happen next. It helps that I enjoyed the characters in the game, mainly Alethea, Alethea because she's a badass, and the combat does a great job of putting you in her shoes. There's a ton of interesting options in combat. You can swing in any direction, perform lengthy light attack combos that you can cancel by rolling or jumping, and I'll note that you can also cancel the rolls by attacking or jumping, meaning this game has a lot of opportunities to animation cancel. Just saying for any speedrunners watching this. On top of this, there's very powerful heavy attacks that you have to commit to, and one of my favorites, the Whirlwind Slash, which can be used to shield yourself from projectiles. There's an attack that works like a pogo, but also has a fast fall built into it, which feels amazing to use. And of course, the gun. The gun charges through attacking enemies with the sword, and you have the choice to use two different kinds of bullets. Bullets that deal health damage, or bullets that deal break damage. If the enemy's break meter reaches 0, it'll become vulnerable and stunned. That means against certain enemies, such as bosses or larger enemies that have shields, reducing their break meter before attacking their HP is often a good strategy. The gun is very powerful to the point where I'm expecting it might get nerfed just a little, but either way, that makes it essential to switch between melee and ranged combat. Creatively weaving together different attacks is the best part of this game's combat. It is clear they put a lot of effort into making the movement and combat feel satisfying. Gestalt has a lot of enemies that you'll face, but they are typically on the simple side. Some enemies are more complex, but the enemy AI definitely feels retro. I don't think this is a bad thing, it's just important to know what you're getting into. As long as you're patient, once you've faced an enemy a few times and understand its attacks, they're generally not super difficult to deal with, and the same goes for bosses. The quality of the bosses was mixed. A few were pushovers, while others were more substantial and enjoyable. To Gestalt's credit, there is a lot of variety. Each time you enter a new area, you'll find a unique cast of enemies along with one or two bosses, and the level design is interesting and varied enough that you'll encounter these enemies in a number of unique situations. They also consistently succeeded at animating and designing the enemies to look absolutely amazing, especially the bosses. One of the most enjoyable parts of the game, however, is the game's progression systems. Mainly what I'm talking about here is the game's talent tree. You earn ability points from fighting enemies and leveling up, from unlocking new save points, from completing side quests and bounties, and from certain destructible objects you can find while exploring. Oh, and you can also get them by rescuing dogs, which are lost and scattered throughout the map. And yes, you can pet them. You can take ability points you earn through all these different sources and use them to progress and unlock different abilities. Smaller nodes grant small stat increases, while larger nodes offer more significant buffs. New abilities increased healing or accessory slots. Accessories are equipable items you can find throughout the game or purchase from NPCs. Accessories usually provide statistical buffs to HP, defense, melee damage, range damage, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, money or items earned, etc., etc. Through these two systems combined, you can specialize your character to become more durable, focus on critical hits, ranged or melee damage, or health or break damage. I was constantly running around the map and collecting ability points to try and get the next big unlock. It made exploration feel that much more rewarding, and the level design with tons of hidden items and secret paths did a lot of work to keep the game feeling fresh and fun. And as I alluded to earlier, by the time you reach the end of the game, you're going to have a lot of different abilities. You'll also have explored a lot of different and unique zones. One of my favorite parts of the game was entering a new zone and seeing the new color palette and style the area would have. It's not like the areas are just colored differently though. The style of each area is actually very different. Canaan is all steampunk, but even the city ranges from slum-like areas to a rich utopia. I don't want to spoil everything, but trust me, the areas are super unique and the artwork is consistently insanely detailed throughout the entire game. Just look at the background of any area. It's insane. It's always layers upon layers upon layers, but there's tons of objects in the foreground too, tons of beautifully animated enemies, and the characters and bosses have excellent designs and animations too. The art was absolutely the best part of the game for me, and if you just watch any gameplay or trailer, you'll know exactly what I mean. But I'm also a person who needs solid music to enjoy a game, and Gestalt actually has pretty great music as well. In conclusion, I think Gestalt is absolutely worth looking into. Overall, I found the game quite enjoyable and well made, and as I progressed through it, I felt like the movement, combat, and story became more and more interesting. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this game for quite some time, so I'm happy to give my personal opinion that Gestalt delivers. Given that this is the first title by Metamorphosis Games, I think it's super impressive that they've pulled this off, and I'm interested in what they'll move on to next. If Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder sounds like it might be up your alley, click the link in the description and purchase the game before July 23rd for 10% off. But that's all for now. Thanks so much for watching.